So once he found the headwaters, he had to actually convince them, and this is where he described himself in a way I loved. He said, "I'm effectively an ambassador for raising capital." His whole job is to sell a country to the richest institutions on earth. And that pitch has 3 stages. Stage 1, why here? First, you have to convince them the country itself is worth their money. You're the salesperson for the entire market. Stage 2, what here? Once they believe in the country, you convince them what specifically to invest in. Stage 3, and this is the hard one. Why you? Because if you're sitting on $1 trillion and someone shows up saying, invest in my country, you'll say, fine, I'll hear him out. But let me check if what he said is true. Let me talk to 3 other people. And let me find 10 other managers like him. So how does a brand new fund manager ever break in? He was honest. It's brutally hard. It took him 5 years of showing up before one major investor gave him a single dollar. 5 years of proving, I'm doing this consistently. And here's the insight that applies to everyone, not just finance. What these institutions look for isn't the best performer, it's the consistent one. He said if you've made 18 to 19% consistently for 10 years, and another manager made 23% for just 2 years, the money goes to you, every time. Consistency beats brilliance. A 10-year track record beats a 2-year hot streak. That's true for funds, and it's true for careers, businesses, and reputations. Let me tell you the deal that made his name, because it teaches something no textbook will. Early on, with a small real estate fund, he made a huge bet on a single building. A piece of ground with all its approvals, right when international software companies were desperate for office space. The plan was simple: build it, lease it, sell it. But here's the moment that reveals how the pros operate. A giant multinational verbally committed to take a floor at a great rate. Everyone was happy, but they wouldn't put it in writing. For months, they kept saying, I'm there, trust me. Meanwhile, the market kept rising and later tenants were signing at higher rates. So what did he do? He sent the first tenant a cancellation notice. Chaos. Their Asia head came running. And his reasoning is the lesson. He said, I'm a fiduciary. I'm not a developer who can do whatever I feel like. I took money from other people. Someone will audit me and ask, why did you sign this tenant at a lower rate than the ones after? It looks like something's wrong, like I pocketed the difference. So he forced the paperwork to protect his investors from even the appearance of wrongdoing. That's fiduciary discipline. When you manage other people's money, everything is an open book, and you must be careful. The numbers? They spent about 234 crore building it. They sold it for 525 crore. Plus, pulled out another 100 crore along the way, in roughly 4 years. But his real point wasn't the profit. It was that this proved a model, and to do it at scale, he needed access to those giant global pools of capital. One great deal is a demonstration. Turning it into a machine is the real work. Now, the thing I most wanted to understand, how did he make bets years before everyone else? Like investing in data centers back in 2020, long before the AI boom made them obvious. He was honest. He did think a little about AI. But that wasn't the core bet. His reasoning was simpler and smarter. He looked at his country and saw one of the largest smartphone populations on Earth, with millions of people creating and consuming enormous amounts of content. And he asked a basic question: where is all that data going to be stored? At the time, there were only 4 data center operators in the entire country, and most of that data was being stored abroad. Then, he connected the dots nobody else was connecting. If data privacy is a huge issue in the West, how could it be acceptable that a nation's financial and personal data all sits outside its borders. So he made the bet. Invest in data centers, and the regulations protecting them will come on their own. And that's exactly what happened. The central bank later ordered that all financial data be stored domestically. He saw the rule coming before it existed. That's what he calls seeing around corners. He put it beautifully. It's the ability to connect dots that seem unconnected. Everyone had the same information. He just had a different instinct about what it meant. He made over 30% on that data center bet. Not because he had secret information, but because he took public dots and drew a line into the future that others couldn't see. That's the real edge of the wealthy. Same data, different instinct. So I asked him directly, do the truly rich people with billions diversify? Or do they go all in on concentrated bets? His answer was clear. When a person becomes wealthy, their very first instinct is preservation. Because they know exactly what it took to get there, all the struggle. So they will not put all their eggs in one basket. They do careful asset allocation. They protect what they built. He said, this is what younger people don't understand. The rich know how hard it is to make money, so they focus intensely on keeping it. But then he showed me a fascinating contradiction. He'd been researching global markets, and look at where the hot money is flowing right now. In Taiwan, one company is about half the entire market. In the Netherlands, one company, around 50%. In Denmark, one company near 40%. In South Korea, one company over a third. Wildly concentrated. And these are the markets attracting crazy amounts of international capital. So why does concentration win there? Because each of those single companies isn't serving its home market. It's serving the world. The chip giant supplies the entire planet's semiconductor industry. It's almost a monopoly on a global need. That's the key distinction. You can justify a huge concentrated position only if the company is so unique, addressing such a massive world market that there's no real competitor. It's not about the country. It's about owning something the whole world needs and can't get elsewhere. So the lesson isn't diversify or concentrate. It's preserve by default, but concentrate only when you own something genuinely irreplaceable. At the end, I asked him the question I ask every guest. What's one piece of advice nobody should follow? He smiled and said, ignore your instincts. That's the advice to reject. Because if someone tells you to ignore your gut, don't. Follow it. And this comes from a man who moves billions of dollars for the most data-driven institutions on the planet. He said, sometimes the answer is better than the data. He put it this way. Everyone has access to the same data, but everyone does not have the same instinct. You and I can look at the exact same opportunity and do completely different things with it, and that difference is what defines your outcome. Data, he said, is a supplement. Your instinct is the thing. The wealthy aren't wealthy because they had better spreadsheets. They're wealthy because they trained the muscle of judgment, of connecting dots, of trusting a gut refined by thousands of decisions. And here's how it all ties together. The ultra-rich don't have secret information. They have better sources, a clearer filter, an obsession with getting their money back, the patience for consistency, and above all, the courage to trust their own instinct when the data can't decide. You already have instincts. The question is whether you'll spend your life ignoring them or sharpening them until they're worth trusting. That's the real secret. It was never insider information. It was always the quality of your own judgment. If this changed how you think about money, subscribe and drop one insight that hit you hardest in the comments. Because one conversation really can change the way you see everything. I'll see you in the next one.